Welcome back to the Inner Compass. I am your host, Sasha. I know it has been a while that I came back with another promised episode, but before diving into it, I would just tell you that I was trying to balance myself. And I want to start this episode with a very simple question that you need to ask yourself today. How are you actually doing? I don't want the version that you tell most of the people, I'm fine, busy, but good. But I want the version, the actual one, what you feel, not the one that you deliver on an autopilot when someone asks in the passing. Because if you are anything like the people who have been writing to me, and I suspect you might be, there is a very real chance that the honest answer to the question sounds something like stretched, pulled into too many directions, running on not quite enough. Like there is always one more thing, always someone who needs something, always a version of you that is required somewhere and not quite enough of you to go around. That feeling, that particular exhaustion of being needed more than you are resourced, is what today's episode is about. We are talking about balance. I am not going to tell you or ask you about the version that you have been sold for, not the color coded planners that you make, not even the perfect morning routine, not the image of a life divided into neat, equal portions where everything gets its fair share of your attention and nobody goes without. The real version, the dynamic, honest, imperfect, deeply personal practice of finding your way back to yourself when life tips. That is what I'm going to talk about. And it always tips. That is not the problem. How we return, that means everything. Think about it. If you are always exhausted, you feel that you're stuck somewhere, that is something where you need to work and come back to your original self. So let me describe a day and tell me if any part of this sounds familiar. You woke up already behind, not because anything has gone wrong yet, but because the list in your head started running before you even opened your eyes. You move through the morning, coffee, commute, whatever the first demands of the day are, in a state of low level urgency that never quite lifts. You are present enough to function, but somewhere underneath, you are not really there. You get to the end of the day and feel simultaneously exhausted and like you did not do enough. Like you were in motion all day and somehow still fell short. Like you were busy, genuinely, unquestionably busy, and yet the things that actually matters to you got the leftover version of your action. The relationships, the creativity, the quiet, the version of yourself that is not performing anything for anyone. The version of you that just is. That version got what was left, which was never much. And you tell yourself, tomorrow I will do better. Tomorrow I'll find the balance. Tomorrow, when the things slow down a little, I will finally feel like I am managing. But here is the thing, things do not settle down, and tomorrow looks great deal like today. The waiting for balance to arrive is itself the imbalance. Don't you think so? That we keep on waiting for a perfect moment to make sense, but we end up with the same routine, the same push that we feel in the morning. I want to say something about the version of balance we are told about because I think it has done a lot of damage. The wellness industry version of balance looks like a beautiful, sustainable division of your time and energy between work, rest, relationships, health, creativity, and self. Equal portions, clearly delineated, maintained consistently, looking effortless from the outside. That version of balance does not exist. And I think that exists just for the social media posts. Don't you think so? Only few people who actually can afford to become that balanced, they don't have something to complete at hand. And I think this could be one thing that we all relate. Not for anyone living a real life with real demands and real relationships, real unexpected things that arrive without warning or reorganize everything. Chasing that version of balance, I don't call it as self care. It is a new form of self criticism, a standard so impossible that you are guaranteed to feel like you are failing. The pursuit of perfect balance keeps us focused on the gap between where we are, where we think we should be, and that gap, that permanent, exhausting, unresolvable gap, is where burnout lives. So, if perfect balance is a myth, what is real? Real balance is dynamic. It moves, it shifts, it looks like different on Monday than it does on Friday. It looks different during a difficult season than during a quiet one. Real balance is not an achievement that you have to reach. It is a practice of returning to who you truly are, returning to yourself again and again, as many times as the day, the week, the life tips you away from it. That returning, that is the art. I feel we should not run or think that the life should be perfect, but I think we should be practical enough to accept that the changes are part of life. How do we actually get through is the most important thing. Now, a simple question. What is tipping your life right now? If everything genuinely feels like too much right now, I want to start by saying that feeling is real, not dramatic, not a sign that something is wrong with you, just real. You are carrying a lot, and the thing balance asks of you is not a carry it perfectly. It is supposed to be honest about how heavy it feels. So let us start there. When that heaviness take up most of the space, that matters a lot. If you recognize yourself as someone who consistently puts everyone else first, I want to gently ask, who taught you that your needs came last? Because that was not a truth you arrived at your own. It was learned. And what was learned can be unlearned. So today's practices are especially for you because balance for you begins not with a new routine but with the radical act of including yourself in your own care. If you cannot rest without guilt, you are not alone. Most of the people I hear from describe exactly this. The moment they stop, the discomfort starts. The sense that stopping is failing, that stillness is laziness, that they have not yet earned the rest. Today, I am going to offer you something very simple. Rest is not the reward at the end of the work. Rest is part of the work. It is what makes everything else sustainable, and you do not have to earn it. If you genuinely feel like you have no time for yourself, I believe in you. And I also want to gently offer this. The practices in today's episode will not take up a complete hour. They might require 30 seconds, just three questions to answer, and one honest no. Balance does not begin when time appears. It begins when you decide that you are worthy of those 30 seconds of your own complete attention today, even in the middle of the busy day. If you're running on empty, so depleted that you can barely identify what you need, let alone access it, then the first practice is not a technique. It is simply a pause. Just stop for a moment and ask, what is the most basic thing my body requires right now? Not tomorrow, now. It could be sleep, water, air, quiet time, food, moment. Start there. Balance, when you are on empty, does not begin with the system. It begins with the most fundamental return to the body you have been ignoring. If you genuinely do not know what you need, that itself is a big information. It usually means you have been so long in service of what others need that your own needs have gone quiet. Let me make sure and tell you that they have not disappeared. They have simply stopped being asked. Today's three-question check-in is exactly for you. Ask those questions slowly and take as much time that you want to answer them. They are there, quieter than they used to be, but still there. And they will get louder the more consistently you ask. So, here is the shift that I want to offer you today. It may be the small one, but I think it changes everything. Stop asking, am I balanced? Start asking what I need to do to return to myself. Do you feel the difference in these two questions? The first question measures you against a standard. It invites judgment. It makes balance in a state you either are in or are failing to be in. Whereas the second question treats balance as a direction, not a destination to reach. It asks, where am I right now? And what is the most honest, compassionate, practical thing I can do to move back toward myself? Sometimes your answer will surprise you. The answer can be sleep, sometimes it can be movement, sometimes it is 10 minutes of complete silence. Sometimes it can be the conversation you have been avoiding for so long. Sometimes it is just simply saying no to something you said yes to before you checked in with yourself. The answer that you will get is always personal. The answer is always now. And the answer is almost always simpler than you think. Because I have come to believe about balance, you do not find balance by adding more. You find it by removing what is pulling you further from yourself and returning again and again to the things that most reliably bring you back. Not perfectly, not permanently, just back to yourself, to your inner compass. One breath closer to yourself than you were a moment ago. One choice that honors what you actually need rather than what the to do list that you have made demands. One tiny return made again and again every day for the rest of your life. That is not failure. That is the practice. And the practice done with enough patience, enough self compassion becomes life. So, I am going to share 4 simple practices, not 4 more things to add on, but 4 ways that can bring you back. Small, honest, available to you any moment that you need, that work precisely because they do not require the condition to be perfect in the first place. And all these practices, I have named them and curated with all the experiences and love throughout my life. And I am going to share it with you today. Consistently practicing them will bring you back. So, the first one, you can do it daily because it requires just 2 minutes of your day. And I have named it as the 3 question check in. Once a day, it can be in the morning if you are comfortable, but if done at any time, you just have to sit with yourself and ask these 3 questions. I don't want you to take it as a performance of self care, but it is a genuine, honest 30-second check in with the person you most often forget to check. That is yourself. So the question 1 says, what is my energy like right now? And you have to be as honest, as brutally honest as you can. Not what it should look like, not what you wished it was, but what it actually is. Full, depleted, somewhere in between. You need to be honest. Second question, what is pulling me furthest from myself today? The obligation, the anxiety, the relationship, the situation that is costing the most, You just have to name it. The trick I think we have been following since our first episode. So it is just similar to that. Just name it. Question 3. What is one thing I can do today, not some other day, but to move one step ahead, one step towards myself? Not just to fix everything, not to find some perfection in the balance, but just one step. It could be small, but it will be honest if you be there with yourself, and it can become one of the honest available thing that you have. These answers will change every day. That is the point. Balance is not setting you adjust once. It is a daily conversation with yourself about what you need right now in that moment. 3 questions every day, not as a system, but as a conversation with yourself. The most important one you will have today, because it is the one where you are finally the subject and not the afterthought. You don't have to get involved into what will happen or thinking about what impact it might have in the future, but present in that complete moment. The second practice, I have named it as the energy audit. This can be done weekly, but again, your consistency and your honesty matters the most. Once a week, Sunday evening or Monday morning, take out just 5 to 10 minutes and do an honest energy audit of the week ahead. Look at what is in your schedule, not to see whether it all fits, but to notice which things give energy and which things are actually draining it. Some things are non negotiable and energy draining. Note them down. They need extra restoration around them. Some things you have said yes to, but you wanted to say a no. So renegotiate, or you can ask for some support. And somewhere in the week, find one non negotiable slot that belongs only to you, not a gap in the schedule, not just the leftover time. It should be a deliberate, protected, actual appointment with your own restoration. You have to mark it in the calendar. Call it whatever you feel like and treat it with the same respect you give every other commitment. Your restoration is not luxury item at the bottom of the list. It is the fuel that makes everything else on the list possible. What gives and what takes, you have to know the difference. And then, before the week begins, make sure the taking does not consume everything without leaving anything for the giving back. As I always say, and come to my favorite quote, we can't pour from the empty cup. We have to fill ourselves to keep even others charged or happy. So, the energy audit, you have to do it. The next practice, I have called it the micro return. It is one of the instant practice which can be done in the moment you are. This practice is for right in the middle of the day, even when you cannot stop. cannot step away, cannot take a long break, but you can feel yourself tipping. The micro return is any small, deliberate, conscious act of coming back to yourself in 30 seconds or less. How it works? Just three deep breaths before you jump onto the next task. You open that next email. 30 seconds of standing outside in the air, 2 minutes of silence with your eyes closed, the deliberate choice to drink a glass of water slowly, actually feeling the taste, actually present for those 30 seconds, that will change something inside you. These are not solutions. They are not substitutes for genuine rest, but they interrupt the autopilot mode that you have been working for so long. They create a moment of consciousness in the middle of the rush. And consciousness, even for 30 seconds, is a return. The accumulation of micro returns across a day is the difference between arriving home completely empty and arriving home with something still left for the people and things you love. You do not need an hour, you just need 30 seconds right now. Three breaths, eyes closed, back to yourself. And then carry on. That is the whole practice. I mean, we are worthy of our complete 30 seconds just because we just want to come back to ourselves. I hope this is something we can do anytime. The last practice, I have named it deliberately the honest no. And of all the practice I could offer you today, this is the one that will do the most to restore your balance. Not a breathing technique, not a morning routine, the willingness to say no to one thing this week that you would do normally, say yes to out of guilt, habit, or fear of disappointing someone. If you remember, we covered about boundaries in episode 8. This is the daily application of that work because balance is not only about how you rest, it is about what you agree to carry. And many of us are carrying things we agreed to before we checked in with ourselves. Things that are not yours, things that belong to someone else's list. One honest no this week to something that is genuinely not yours to carry. It does not have to be dramatic, it does not have to come with a long explanation, it just has to be honest. I can't take that on right now. That is a complete sentence. And it is one of the most powerful acts of balance available to you today and rest of the days. Every yes you give to something that is not yours to carry is a no to something that is. Know what you are actually saying yes to before you just jump into doing it, before you say a yes to it. Before I let you go, I want to say something to the person who has been running on not quite enough for longer than they want to admit. You are not failing at balance. You are living a full, demanding, complicated life and doing it largely without permission to rest, to need, to not be available for one single hour. That permission exists. I am offering it to you now. You are allowed to rest before you get empty. You are allowed to say no before you are resentful. You are allowed to tend to yourself, not as a reward for getting everything done, but a non negotiable condition of being able to keep going. I would repeat my words. Balance is not luxury, it is something you earn after the hard season ends. And I feel that we all are worthy of that balance, that no, that moment. So please make sure you find some time, honest time to be precise, for yourself. It is the practice that makes hard seasons survivable. And it begins not with a new system, not with a restructured calendar, but with one honest question asked today: what do I need to return? Ask it, listen to the answer, and take it seriously. Together we heal, together we grow, together we rise. One additional thing about next week to give you and keep you curious about the episode, because after everything we have explained about balance, returning, noticing, choosing, there lies a deeper question. Are you actually here? Not here as in alive and functioning, but here, present, awake, inhabiting the moments of your life as they actually are happening, rather than moving through them on autopilot, already planning the next thing. Episode 13: The Practice of Presence. Why mindfulness changes everything. Next week, this is what the episode is about, and I will see you there. Balance is not something you find when life slows down. It is the practice that makes sure you do not have to wait for it. So, I will see you in the next episode. Till that time, keep working, stay healthy, and have a good time.